Hello, y'all. Hello, y'all. Hey, what's up? How you doing? Good. In Philadelphia, in the Philadelphia airport. On my way home. Not gonna tell you where I'm coming home from just yet, but in a couple minutes, when I start recording, I'm gonna tell you. Yeah, so we're just gonna record here at about 9:59 on Saturday morning. September 1st. Feliz día feliz día, primer día de España. Del septiembre. Hoy es el 1 de septiembre 2018. Wow, it's September. Todavía es septiembre. Tan rápido se fue volando el tiempo. How fast time goes. Crazy, just downright crazy. I'll tell you what's crazy. This guy sitting in an airport talking to a camera. I don't even know if you're listening, but I think you're listening. But if you're not listening, whatever, you're not listening. Ain't gonna change. Show must go on. So what I'm gonna do here now is I almost said read to you, is I'd like to try to get this shit up. I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about what I learned this week, just because it's what we're gonna do, because this is a show about learning. So I'm gonna tell you what I learned this week, I will also tell you that I'm in a public facility, and so there's gonna be a lot of ancillary noises. Whatever. All right, so let's rock and roll. Let's rock you, Louis Brenneman, and roll. Nice poofy hair this morning.
This is the final water call from American.
Should I wear my sunglasses? I wear my sunglasses. This would be my shield from other people, just so they can't even see me. So I'm just talking, but they can't even hear me or see me. Okay, I'll wear my glasses. All right, 1, 2, 3. Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of What I Learned This Week. So I want to throw a couple disclaimers out there. First and foremost, I'm wearing sunglasses. Second most, in an airport. So you're going to hear a lot of ancillary noise. Ancillary noise in the form of people walking by, kids walking by, running, yelling, laughing, screaming. Announcements on the PA suggesting that someone just left their thing in terminal whatever. Maybe some other stuff too, but hopefully you're going to enjoy this audio, and I know you're going to enjoy the content. Oh, there we go. There's our first one. I don't even know if you can hear what I'm saying now when she's talking, but I'm just going to keep talking. When I'm in the Philadelphia airport, I'm on my way back from an incredible trip, one of which I'm going to create a solo-sode for this week, and I was up in Maine, Origin, Maine. So Origin, actually I don't even know if that's the name of the town, but it's the name of the company, and it's the name of the jiu-jitsu camp. It was at Camp Laurel. So there's so much that I learned this week. First of all, it was at a place, so this is a BJJ camp, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu camp. So, I listen to Jocko Willink all the time. He partnered with Origin BJJ. Origin BJJ is a jiu-jitsu apparel company. They're developing into more lifestyle brands, but it's a company in Maine, headed by a guy named Pete, who is a great guy. But they really, I think their slogan or their message in terms of manufacturing is taking America back. They have a lot of pride in the fact that their gis, and I'll talk more about this on Thursday's episode, are created, their apparel was created in their factory, in their small town in Maine. So it's very neat. So Jocko collaborates with them and is partners with them in, promoting BJJ, the apparel company, supplement company, etc. So I got to go up there to a jiu-jitsu camp. Again, I'm going to go more in depth this on Thursday. I'll go all out, but it was a chance to learn. It was a chance to learn. I hadn't learned jiu-jitsu in quite a while, so it was fun in that regard. But also just to learn, how does business work? How does this work? How does growing a following work with both Origin BJJ, but also with Jocko and Echelon Front, and the other guys that were up there from their team. So it was a tremendous experience. That's why I'm in an airport. That's why you're going to hear imperfect audio. But what we are going to talk about is what I learned this week. And what I learned this week was some awesome stuff aside from just my trip to Origin. I learned from the books and the conversations that I had. The book that I'm currently reading is Kevin Hart's book, I Can't Make This Up. I smile every time I say the title of it because it is an incredible book. It's full. I could probably easily spend 20 AMXs on this book. I'm not. I think I'm going to spend 10. But there's a wealth, a ton. If you're out there and you have a dream, if you're discouraged, if there's maybe some important people are telling you, nope, you don't got it, you don't have it, but you do believe in hard work, and you do believe in persistence, and you do believe in originality, you do believe in winning and losing and keeping going, you absolutely need to read this book, I Can't Make This Up, by Kevin Hart. You can get this book as well as every other book. If you want to help support the show in a small way, by getting these books off my website, charliespaniard.com/reading list. So I'm going to jump into the content for this week, and again, forgive me for the ancillary side noises here. We're going to do our best. First, this is a small quote from the book. It says this: life is a story. It's full of chapters. And the beauty of life is that not only do you get to choose how you interpret each chapter, and the pop-up to the Wi-Fi, how you interpret each chapter, but your interpretation writes the next chapter. So why not choose the one that serves your life best? So here's the deal. Life's a story. It's full of chapters. You get to interpret each chapter, and your interpretation writes the next chapter. I always bring this back to this analogy of the Choose Your Own Adventure books. Remember when you sat down to read a Choose Your Own Adventure book? You don't even know where you're going. It's if this, then choose this one. If that, then choose that one. So that's the deal with life. That's what Kevin Hart is telling us. It is a choose your own adventure. You do write your own stories, and how you interpret them is up to you. That got me thinking. Remember Jack Canfield's The Success Principles? And again, every book that I reference, 95% of them are on my website. A lot of people say, slow down, so I can get that book. Boom, go to my website. You're going to find them there. Success Principles is a tremendous book you should read. But his version of that idea is E plus R equals O. Event plus response equals opportunity. Outcome, my bad. Event plus response equals outcome. There you have it. Event plus response equals outcome. Whether you look at life as full of chapters and the beauties that you get to interpret those chapters, or you follow the E plus R equals O, event plus response equals outcome, we're essentially writing our own chapter. We're writing our own next chapter. It really is a choose your own adventure. So what's that mean? That means choose stinking wisely. Moving on. I am going to do a little karaoke on this one. Moving on to the next bullet point. And remember, these bullet points are coming from the What I Learned This Week document. And I have a vision of writing What I Learned This Year books. I hope that's not a secret. You know what it's supposed to say, but that's an idea that we have brewing. Where I'm just going to write books on what I learned every year. That way I can just keep me fresh forever. And hopefully keep you educated and entertained forever. Forever. Moving on to the next bullet point from this document. If you want to get this document, visit my website, charliespaniard.com, to opt in. So have you ever, I'm 37. I won't even, I'll just say this, and I think maybe you'll nod your head. I'm 37. I read a lot, ask a lot of questions. I travel to a lot of places. I travel to a lot of places of really successful people. In the past 2 weeks, Dredd has referred to me as a chameleon, not in a negative way, and that's not sarcastic, not in a negative way, but in a favorable way. My wife and I were talking, and she said I'm influenced by people. You could look at that negatively, right? You could look at that as like you're fair weather and you do this and you do that. The one thing that remains the same in me while chameleonizing or while being influenced is my core, right? My core values. The discipline, the hard work, the trust, the loyalty, the authenticity, the simplicity, the truth, on which I stand, the discipline on which I, Charlie Brenneman, stand. The outer stuff is fluctuating because I'm in a quest for my best self. I'm in a quest to evolve and improve and grow and learn. So that's the stuff that changes. And a lot of that stuff will kind of buff out. I say it'll buff out, except I put the shh in front of the it'll buff out. It'll buff out how it's supposed to buff out. But even 37 going on this camp up to the BJJ camp, I'm around like uber successful people who build businesses, develop followers, who have millions and millions and millions of people listening to what they say. So I'm exposed to that stuff, and I look and I listen, and eventually you adapt, evolve, and make that your own. So Kevin Hart in his early on, and if you've been following me for a long time, I'm sure you can see it in me too. Have I ever done anything or said anything that you're like, yeah, like that was kind of corny, that was kind of cheesy? I'm trying, right? I'm trying stuff. If you remember when I read the book, Steve Martin's book, Born Standing Up, you remember that he said he spent 10 years developing himself. 10 years developing himself, 4 years refining himself, and 4 years being successful. So it takes time. You ain't gonna win them all. Not everyone's gonna be a grand slam. Kevin Hart had that same idea, and he had a nickname, a cheesy nickname. You read the book to find it out. Early on, and some established comedian said, "Drop it, son, drop it." So he said, in this quest to kind of discover himself, figure himself out, to be comfortable on stage in front of a camera, he said this: "I first had to do the one thing that every human being must do at some point in their lives. Otherwise, they haven't really lived. Accept myself." He had to accept himself. So think of this. I'm going to relate it to fighting. So Kevin Hart's saying he had to do the one thing that everyone has to do: accept themselves. I'm relating his experiences on stage to Steve Martin's experiences on stage, and I'm also going to experience my experience on stage, on the fighting stage. When I was fighting, I'm a wrestler. I'm a top-heavy wrestler. A lot of people say that's boring. A lot of people refer to Josh Koscheck as a blanket. A lot of people refer to me as a blanket, right? The higher-ups in the industry expressed that concern or that critique to my coach. So then I started to change the way I was. I started to change the way I was to make them happy. And what happened? I got choked out, knocked out, choked out, right? So I started to kind of buy into what other people were saying, getting away from my core. And like I said, there's an ebb and flow to learning, but at the end of the day, you ebb and you flow and you try and you try and you try, and then eventually it settles on you. And I feel like every day, every single day of listening, learning, asking, doing, rearranging, pivoting, I feel like all of that is coming closer and closer and closer to the purest me. Kevin Hart is telling us that's what he did. He had to accept himself. He had to accept his physical attributes. He had to accept his personality attributes so that he was him. He was speaking the truth, right? With all the Native American study that I do, what do they talk about? They talk about speak straight, right? Speak straight. The 4 agreements, we talk about speaking impeccably. In the Success Principles, he talks about being impeccable with your word. Bear Grylls tells us all the time, told me once, and I say it all the time, about not gossiping. If the person you're speaking to will think less of the person you're speaking about, it's gossip, so cut it out. So all of these things are telling us to get closer and closer and closer to the purity of ourselves. Remember Awakening Spirits? When I read Awakening Spirits and talked about that book, the grandfather's quest with the simplicity and the truth across all religions that remain the same. If you read hundreds and hundreds of books and have hundreds of conversations, those truths, maybe there's truths of living, there's truths of Kevin Hart saying to fully live. You've got to find those truths, and you find those truths by learning, listening, asking, doing, failing, getting back up, and keeping moving forward. Speaking of Jocko, speaking of my time up there with him and the other guys at Origin BJJ Camp, AMX Kids. I'm reading his kids book, Way of the Warrior Kid. I'm going to say this. You know, this is Tuesdays. I'm referring to Tuesday's AMX Kids episode. I'm going to say this to your kids or for your kids, but it's for you too. I'm 37, father of 2, active, been married 6 years. I had to think there. I know the anniversary, honey. I just had to do the math. But this book, Way of the Warrior Kid, is a tremendous thinking book. It's about raising a warrior kid. A warrior kid is not just fighting. It's not just, what warrior, the connotation. It's being nice. It's doing the right things. It's being disciplined, right? Those are the things that I read to learn about and then to teach about. This book, Way of the Warrior Kid, for anyone who has a kid, for anyone who believes in this discipline and hard work idea, you need to read that book. Dave Burke, who's my friend and part of Jocko's Echelon Front team, he said it makes parenting easier for him because it teaches the kids, but it also teaches him. It teaches me, it'll teach all of the parents, but also the kids. I highly encourage you, if you have young people in your lives, or if you just want a little bit extra for yourself in a fun, these are kids' books that I'm talking about, so I'm not going to stretch your brain that much, but it can be for you too, even if you don't have kids. But Way of the Warrior Kid, Jocko's kids' books are tremendous stinking books. I love them. There's 2 of them, 2 kids' books, Warrior Kid books. They're absolutely tremendous. It talks, and this week we cover the importance of knowledge, right? Knowing things, and the value of sports and discipline. So these are life lessons. AMX is life lessons. AMX Kids is life lessons for kids, brought to you through kids' books, not grown-up books, or as much of grown-ups as we truly are, because I'm not very much a grown-up. Anyway, AMX Kids Tuesdays, get on it, my friends. Now let's talk about the dream, right? The dream. What's your dream? I was talking to someone, a neat thing about going to these events. So I'm heading to another event here in the future, and the neat thing about going to these events is you're around high performers, you're around big time thinkers, you're around doers, you're around inspired, disciplined people. Of course there's a wide range, but that's the general category of people that you're around. And I was talking to a guy who has a business from Australia, and I was talking to him, and I said something about what I want, blah blah, and he said, well, what is it that you want? And I was like, that's a dang good question. And I have a vision of what I want. I don't know that I've written it down precisely enough. Dred and I are always talking, again, following the success principles, about that specific thing. But what do I want is to create an engaging life that revolves around learning, that provides my family a nice life, a very experiential life that influences and helps people and convinces, maybe convinces is the right word, I don't know, but people to become lifelong learners. That's what you do. If I can embody lifelong learning as hard, if I can embody systematically learning and doing as hard or as potently as anyone on earth, that can't help but inspire people. It can't help. You know why Jocko's got such a big stinking following? Because Jocko is Jocko, period. I'll talk about this more on Thursday's episode, but they are them. Their business is the fruition of them, right? It is them, right? AMX is me and this love of learning and engaging in learning and wanting to talk about books and this wealth of knowledge and power of information and then actually do it. That stuff to me is the most engaging, fulfilling thing in the world. And that's exactly what I want. Kevin Hart's talking about his dream, and he wants to make it in comedy, and he says this, quote, "It wasn't just about money anymore. I had a dream fueling me. I became known as the guy in the store with all the energy." So it wasn't just about money anymore. I had a dream fueling me. And his thing, he talks so much, if you know Kevin Hart, you know his humor and you know his energy, but he talks about his energy and fun. All right, energy and fun. Let's hit pause right there. Kevin Hart talks about both of them. Ben from Ben and Jerry's talks about the importance of fun. It says if it's not fun, why not do it? Scott Adams, creator of Dilbert, author, tremendous following. He also says energy is the most important metric to track. They are telling us something. They as in knowledge, in the ether, this wisdom that's out there are telling us something. So let's start listening and start executing. And dreams are funny things, you know. Have you ever had a dream? Dreams are funny things because they make you do all kinds of hard things. They make you do all kinds of hard things. They make you get up early, they make you stay up late, they make you do 1,000 push-ups in 40 minutes for no apparent reason at all. Before you head to a flight, they make you do 1,000 push-ups outside on your patio in the dark at 5:15 a.m. before your flight for no apparent reason other than just to do it. They'll make you do all kinds of crazy things. So start racking your brain, start figuring out what that dream is. And then for those of you who have a dream or have had a dream, you know those Debbie Downers and negative Nancy's? You know them people out there are the crabs in a bucket? This was one of my favorite things I learned in the last couple of years. I think this is to my buddy Beardy, so thanks for teaching me this, Beardy. The crabs in a bucket analogy. So if you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, in one bucket, I mean, this is the saying anyway, I've never seen it, I'm just pretty sure it's true, and even if it's not true, it sounds pretty good. The crabs in a bucket, that if you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, and one crab starts crawling out, the other ones are going to latch onto them, pull them right back down. That's the idea here. When you do have this dream, when you do want to execute, when you do want to do something different, there's going to be a lot of naysayers, a lot of Debbie Downers, right? Negative Nancy's, or people who are telling you why you shouldn't do this. I think about that now. I ask so many questions, but when I decided to leave teaching for fighting, I didn't ask one person their opinion. I did get, again, another similarity with Kevin Hart, why you should read this book, because you're going to hear him, you're hearing me say this stuff, but I'm not Kevin Hart. I'm just a dude. It's like, elementary kid compared to Kevin Hart. But when you hear him say it, and then maybe hear me say it, maybe that's like a little bit double, like boom, boom. I didn't ask anyone, I just did it. There was nothing, boom, just did it. I did get permission from my mom. I say my mom, but it was my parents. That's the tentative statement that I made. Had she said no, I don't know what I would have done. She wouldn't have said no. That's not even actually a possibility, come to think about it. But Kevin Hart says this on naysayers and Debbie Downers: don't invite them into the conversation. That smacked me in the face, hit me right here in the jaw. Don't invite them into the conversation. Don't even ask them. There's no reason to seek external approval when you already have internal approval. As if you haven't heard the joy and fulfillment I get out of reading books. Those two sentences right there are worth the whatever bucks I paid for the book, 15 bucks I paid for the book. Don't invite them into the conversation. What's that mean, Charlie? That means stop asking people who aren't on your path. Don't invite them in the conversation. That doesn't mean only have yes people in front of you, because Dredd is not a yes man. My brother Ben is not a yes man. My wife is not a yes woman, right? That's established. So that ain't what's happening. But once you have those people in line, don't invite the other people into the conversation. You don't need external approval when you already have internal approval. My interview this week. So episode number 193. What a fun, stinking interview. So I'm, like a flower blossoming, right? I'm like a hairy flower that's blossoming with a chipped tooth and cauliflower ear. So as I listen, I listen to the people that I want to model. I listen to Joe Rogan. I listen to Aubrey. I listen to Jocko. I listen to Mark Maron. I listen, right? And as you evolve, who was it? It was Stephen King. Stephen King said this great. He said, in his book on writing, which you should read, at first it's imitation, and then that imitation turns into you. So if you ever hear me talking and you're like, oh, well, that's so-and-so, I mean, honestly, it probably is a little bit. But in time, that will become me, if it's not already me. Because that's what you do, standing on the shoulders of giants. If I've seen further, it is only by standing on the shoulders of giants. Right? Isaac Newton, that's what you do. Get me choked up. My daughter, my son, seeing me, seeing my wife, they just do what we do. It's an inherent thing. They're imitating. They just do. They're discovering. It's a good thing I have sunglasses on right now. talking to Facebook Live with sunglasses on in the airport. But they just imitate, right? So my point is this: as I'm broadening, as I'm imitating, as I'm becoming my own, I'm also becoming more comfortable with bringing on more and different types of guests. And the guest in Thursday's episode, Jamie Kilstein, is it's hilarious. I'll be honest, I thought he was a comedian. I've been seeing his name for years. My friend Zach Makovsky, who was a fighter based out of Philadelphia, fought in the UFC, Bellator. I would always see him repost his stuff because Jamie used to train in New York City, and Zach would see him train, and they became friends. And then we were connected from another mutual friend, Matt Anderson. Thank you, Matt. Jamie had reposted something from Kyle Kingsbury, and my buddy said, "Hey, Jamie, you should listen to Kingsbury on Spaniard's podcast." So then I was like, "Boom!" We're both tagged. "Hey, Jamie, would you like to be on my show?" Tremendously insightful, multi-dimensional conversation. He's not just, you'll listen to the show and he'll say, I don't know if I'm a comedian, but I think by trade he's a comedian. He's a BJJ practitioner. He's a BJJ teacher. He's been a person put on the hot seat because of his political views. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast, which really tells the story. We don't get into it too much, but we talk training, we talk lifestyle, we talk comedy, we talk human nature. It's a tremendously insightful conversation. It stretched me, right? It's not bad. I mean, we don't talk about whatever. It's not like controversial, I guess that's a better word. But it brought me to a point where I was sweating a little bit, and it was really neat because it stretched me. And all of this is about stretching and learning and evolving. And we've maintained a relationship since this episode. And I next time, it's funny when I talk to a lot of people, they say, "You ever in California?" I'm not. I'm not. I wish I were. I wish I were a lot, so I could have sit-downs with a lot of these people. But if and when I am in California, you will most likely hear me on Jamie's podcast, but I highly recommend you listen to that. It is episode number 193, and thank you, Jamie, for an awesome hour. Last bullet point of this week's what I learned, but certainly not the last thing I learned this week, because it's just going to keep going. It don't never stop. When people started to notice or acknowledge or praise Kevin Hart, right? So he's hustling, he's grinding. That's another underlying theme, is just his hustle and his grind. And I could go on forever, but I want to keep this to 20, 25 minutes. So when they started to acknowledge him, right? Like, oh, this Kevin Hart guy, he's not bad. He said, quote, "They weren't saying it because I was great, because I was a great comedian, or even a good one. They were saying it because I was persistent, and that persistence was starting to show up in small improvements. Potential is all about your willingness to listen, learn, and improve." Let me repeat that. Your potential is all about your willingness to listen, learn, improve. You know how much it costs to listen? Zero. You know how much it costs to learn? 99.9% of the time, zero, because of Google or the library. You know how much it costs to improve? Maybe a little sweat equity. That's about it. It wasn't because he was a great comedian. And he talks a lot about potential here, and the fact that your potential is all about your willingness to listen, learn, and improve, which have about hard work and timing and relationships, all these different things that come together. But without persistence, without the day in and day out over time, remember that whether or not you do or don't remember, The Slight Edge. It's another tremendous book. He talks about the slight edge being small, consistent actions repeated daily over a long period of time equals big results. That's it. Little bit. I think I haven't checked officially, but I think this month we're either slightly above or slightly below last month's downloads, right? So literally, if we're above, it's probably by 25 or 50, maybe 100, or if we're below, it's by that same number. But that's what it's about, that incremental. It's not, I wish it were 1 million a month more, but it's not. It's about that small, consistent, and if you keep doing your job, and if you keep doing your job in a pure, authentic way, and it's good, people are going to notice. But if you remember from how Adam Smith can change your life, we know that real-world validation, there's no such thing as powerful as real-world validation. And in time, it will tell me, it'll tell you, and it'll tell everyone if you're just good enough. This has been this week's What I Learned. I encourage you all, if you want to help support the show, get your books by way of my website, charliespaniard.com/reading list. Consider leaving a review on iTunes. And if you're looking for a speaker, a dynamic speaker that you would like to, if you're a business, a team, an organization, a group that thinks, I would love for my people to be lifelong learners, but they just don't buy into it, my job is to get them to buy into it. That's it, my friends. I will see you on Monday morning for AMX. See ya. I was going to say the number, AMX, but frankly, I don't know what it is. I think it's 61, maybe. All right, glad I got that done. What I learned. All right, give me 1 second, people. All right, so for those of you who are still there, thanks for tuning in. Tom, Anna, Riley, I saw you sign in a while ago. Amanda Brenneman, but she didn't really sign in. Or if she did, it was automatic and then she deleted it. I know you're not watching. All right, I'll see you Monday for AM Excellence. Till then, my friends, see ya.